Bones embedded in the ground, silent witnesses of a lost time. Some of these fossils tell stories that go beyond science, stories of agony and the struggle for survival. I find myself drawn to the most striking dinosaur fossils, creatures that died under violent, mysterious, and sometimes shocking circumstances. I'm particularly fascinated by the story of the Centrosaurus. They were together, as they always were, a mass of prehistoric life moving with purpose, rhythm, and the synchronization of centuries. The place where it all happened would later become known as the Drowning Cemetery. The Centrosaurus was a medium-sized herbivorous dinosaur that lived during the late Cretaceous period, about 76 million years ago. With its large nasal horn and impressive ornamented frill, it was both a symbol of power and, perhaps, a victim of its own evolution. Measuring about 6 meters in length and weighing more than 2 tons, the Centrosaurus was adapted to life in groups. And it was precisely this group life that sealed the fate of thousands on that fateful day. The site where their bones were discovered, in southern Alberta, Canada, was the stage for one of the largest fossil concentrations ever recorded. The area, once a floodplain near an ancient river, became the collective grave of an entire herd. A tragedy preserved in time, a macabre photograph of a moment of natural horror. The rain fell in a torrential downpour, and within hours the water transformed a familiar and safe territory into chaos. Mud, raging currents, and despair filled the scene. The ground, saturated and unstable, began to collapse. The Centrosaurus, caught by surprise, tried to flee, but the mass escape only generated more destruction. Those at the front were the first to fall. Many were trampled by their panicked companions. Others were swept away by the force of the flood, dragged into lower areas where they were buried alive by the mud that consumed everything. Some, younger or already weakened, simply couldn't keep pace with the herd. Death was swift for some, slow and agonizing for others. What remained was a tangled mass of bodies compressed under the weight of tons of flesh, bone, and earth. And then, with time, silence. Decomposition gave way to fossilization. Horror turned into geological record. Millions of years later, humans would excavate that soil with brushes and spatulas, with a patience that rivaled the passage of time itself. Paleontologists would reveal to the world an unprecedented discovery: more than 10,000 bones belonging to a single species in a single location. The Drowning Cemetery had been revealed. The scientists' interpretation was immediate and brutal. This wasn't the result of deaths occurring over generations. This was a single event, a sudden catastrophe that wiped out an entire herd. Confirmation came from the uniformity of the fossils, the lack of erosion on the bones, and the absence of signs of predation. Everything there screamed urgency, desperation, and tragedy. Now let's turn our attention to another fossil, another dark story. This one involves a Triceratops with an infected bite. Imagine an animal more than 9 meters long, weighing between 6 and 12 tons, slowly walking across the plains of a lost world. Its name, Triceratops horridus. With 3 sharp horns on its face and a protective bony frill rising behind the skull, this giant herbivore was one of the last dinosaurs to inhabit the Earth before the mass extinction event approximately 66 million years ago. But among the many fossils discovered, One tells a particularly dark story marked by pain, survival, and violence. In this specific fossil, what caught paleontologists' attention wasn't just a well-preserved skull. What stood out were perforations located in vulnerable areas of the facial bone. These perforations, when analyzed, revealed a specific pattern: a curvature, a spacing between the marks, a depth compatible with only one living creature of that time, Tyrannosaurus Rex. The powerful jaws of this predator could exert a force of more than 5 tons, enough to crush bone and tear away entire chunks of flesh. But what makes this case so intriguing is that the Triceratops didn't die at the moment of the attack. Quite the opposite. The bone surrounding the perforations shows clear signs of irregular growth, a biological reaction to the body's attempt to heal, an inflamed type of bone callus, typical of infection. The Triceratops survived. This discovery changes the traditional narrative of the late Cretaceous food chain. Instead of a simple predation scene, we're faced with a more complex drama: the attack, survival, infection, continuous pain, and finally a slow death. The skull becomes a witness not only to a brutal fight, but also to the resilience of a wounded animal struggling to carry on. The infection that settled into the perforations of the skull was severe. The disorganized bone growth indicates that the body reacted however it could. This inflammatory response is a clear sign that it lived for several weeks after the attack, perhaps even months. Every movement of the jaw, every bite of leaves or branches caused pain. Now let's travel to the heart of the Gobi Desert. In this inhospitable and arid region lies one of the most dramatic testimonies of the age of dinosaurs. I'm speaking of a moment frozen more than 70 million years ago, where life and death became intertwined in a fierce dance. This is the fossil known as the fighting dinosaurs, Protoceratops versus Velociraptor. 2 names, 2 destinies sealed in a confrontation as brutal as it was intimate. On one side, Protoceratops, a medium-sized herbivore with a large bony frill and a beak sharp as scissors. I've always been fascinated by the instant when life turns to fossil. There's one find in particular that captures this moment with stark clarity. Imagine a velociraptor, that agile, intelligent predator, its killing claw raised, poised to strike, and, locked in mortal combat with it, a Protoceratops, jaws clamped tight on the raptor's arm. Both immobilized, neither able to escape. It's a snapshot of mutual death, preserved in the sand for millions of years. The Velociraptor, with its curved, lethal claws, especially that iconic sickle-shaped one, has inspired myths and films for decades. But this fossil, this single, frozen moment, reveals something beyond just shapes and names. It reveals the precise instant of combat. The sand, rich in minerals and compacted over time, became an extraordinary agent of preservation. Not only were the bones preserved, but also their relative positions. The limbs, the teeth, the claws, everything is there, frozen as if time itself had paused to record the raw ferocity of nature. Now, let's travel to what we now know as Montana, approximately 66 million years ago. Here, one of the most brutal confrontations of the Cretaceous period reached its end. Amid a world dominated by colossal reptiles, the sound of death echoed. A dull impact, muffled, but delivered with unimaginable force. The supreme predator of that ecosystem, the legendary Tyrannosaurus Rex, met its end in a shocking and unexpected way. Its name, now echoing through museum halls and across the pages of paleontological studies, serves as a symbol of both violence and fragility. This particular T-Rex, nicknamed Pex Rex, is a fossil that tells a story unlike any other. When scientists analyzed the fossilized skeleton, they discovered something extraordinary: a massive puncture wound at the neck, precisely where vital arteries, the trachea, and crucial muscles responsible for supporting the head were located. It was as if someone had driven a spear with devastating force straight into the animal's vital system. But this spear wasn't metal. It was bone, the horn of a Triceratops. The scene begins to take shape in the minds of paleontologists. A close quarters confrontation, a decisive strike, a hunting attempt gone wrong. The greatest terrestrial predator of its era, a formidable hunter, became the prey. Bone fragments found around the puncture indicate that the impact was deep, so deep that it pierced soft tissues, blood vessels, and likely perforated the trachea. There are no signs of healing at the site of the wound, no attempt by the body to initiate a recovery process. This means only one thing: the blow was fatal, or, at the very least, the direct cause of death. The fossil Mo 980 was discovered in 1997 by a geologist named Bob Harmon while excavating a region known for its Cretaceous deposits. The nickname Pex Rex was given in honor of Louis Peck, the owner of the ranch where the fossil was found. Since then, Pex Rex has fascinated scientists and the public alike because of its story, because of its end, because of its silent message written into every fracture, every shattered bone. Then there are the mass group deaths. Dinosaurs buried alive. In many parts of the world, paleontologists have unearthed true dinosaur cemeteries, skeletons tangled together as if the animals died in the midst of a desperate attempt to escape. And that is exactly what happened. They tried to flee, they tried to survive, but there was no time. Sandstorms, violent floods, mudslides, sudden and merciless natural forces that transformed the landscape in the blink of an eye. Those who lived there were swallowed alive by the very environment they once called home. These fossil sites reveal something rare: moments of prehistoric life frozen in time, not in isolation, but in community. Entire dinosaur families, from juveniles to adults, preserved side by side. Their deaths bearing witness to an instant of collective panic. These were not natural deaths, isolated or spread out over time. They were sudden events, catastrophic moments when nature turned against its own children with devastating fury. In China, within the Yixian Formation, entire groups of Psittacosaurus, small bipedal herbivores, have been found piled together in layers of volcanic sediment. All evidence suggests they were buried alive by ash from a sudden eruption. In Mongolia, sandstorms engulfed dinosaurs in mid-motion. These weren't the marks of a single, sudden blow. No, these were the marks of prolonged, intense pres. The fractures weren't consistent with a fall or a predator attack. They suggested a stampede. I can almost see it. A herd in a frenzy, running chaotically, maybe startled by a wildfire or a sudden storm. Some would fall, others would stumble over them, and the weight, dozens of tons of flesh and bone, becoming an instrument of death for the weakest. The fossils included juveniles, adults, even hatchlings. It seemed this group lived and died as a family. These Tyrannosaurus, imposing as they looked, were peaceful herbivores with complex social lives. They likely cared for their young, maybe protecting them in defensive circles, like modern elephants do. But no defense can withstand panic. Not all of them died immediately, though. Some fossils showed healed fractures, meaning some individuals survived for a time, even with broken bones. Others showed signs of acute, lethal trauma. The microfractures revealed that the force didn't come from above, like in a landslide. It came from all directions, as if the bodies were compressed within a living mass of desperation. Paleontologists call this herd death, a natural catastrophe that, ironically, preserves fossils so well. Then there's the Carnotaurus with the fractured jaw. Imagine this: a feared predator, a force of nature that roamed what we now call South America over 70 million years ago. Carnotaurus, meat-eating bull, one of the largest and most agile theropods of its time. But even kings have their weaknesses. And sometimes the silent fossil tells a story beyond strength and ferocity. A story of pain, struggle, and maybe silent defeat. This specific Carnotaurus fossil revealed a mystery hidden in its jaw, a significant unhealed fracture. The break was clear and deep, compromising the entire side of its mouth, affecting its ability to hunt, to feed, to survive. When paleontologists examined it, they immediately recognized the severity. It wasn't superficial. It was a severe rupture in the lower jawbone, causing extreme pain and making even basic movements difficult. The absence of any signs of healing was the first clue. When an animal survives a fracture, the bone shows evidence of the healing process: new bone tissue, the formation of calluses, structural adjustments. But in this fossil, there was none of that. The fracture was raw, as if it had occurred just days, maybe even hours, before death. This led to a grim hypothesis. The Carnotaurus died shortly after suffering the injury, possibly from starvation. Unable to fully open its jaw or apply the force to seize and kill prey, the injured Carnotaurus may have been condemned to waste away. A predator, once free and relentless, reduced to a weakened body, slowly succumbing. Imagine the suffering. Every attempt to bite, every movement of the jaw sending waves of pain. Each step slower, more hesitant. A predator transformed into a shadow, pushed out of territorial disputes, abandoned by prey, maybe even by its own kind. Then there's the Tyrannosaurus Rex with bones, bitten by another Tyrannosaurus Rex. In a landscape fossilized more than 66 million years ago, a giant once rested, Tyrannosaurus Rex, the tyrant lizard king, the supreme sovereign of the Cretaceous. But even kings face challenges. A singular fossil, discovered in Montana, revealed something fascinating and unprecedented about this predator. Bite marks on its own bones, made by another Tyrannosaurus Rex. This discovery is both surprising and unsettling. It sheds light on Tyrannosaurus Rex behavior in a way we could only imagine. The tooth marks embedded in the fossilized bones don't belong to a smaller predator. They match the robust, widely spaced, deeply penetrating dentitions of another tyrannosaur. This forces us to reconsider everything we thought we knew about their social and feeding behavior. Are we looking at evidence of cannibalism, a fierce territorial dispute, or the remains of a meal where opportunity outweighed social restraint. To understand the significance, we must understand who Tyrannosaurus Rex was. 13 meters in length, nearly 4 meters tall at the hips, with a jaw capable of exerting up to 6 tons of pres, Tyrannosaurus Rex wasn't merely a predator. It was a bone crusher. Its banana-shaped teeth were capable of crushing not only the teeth of Tyrannosaurus Rex, they left signatures. Literal signatures etched into the fossil remains discovered in Montana. I find myself picturing those bite marks, so deep and clear that they reveal the exact moment another tyrannosaur pressed its teeth against the bone, tearing away flesh, fragmenting parts of the carcass. It's a time capsule, really, a window into behavior that textbooks alone could never describe. But what does it mean? Was Tyrannosaurus Rex eating its own kind? The most widely accepted idea is opportunistic cannibalism. In the wild and hostile environments of the late Cretaceous, food scarcity could have driven even the largest predators to feed on the bodies of their dead counterparts. It's not unprecedented. Crocodiles, sharks, even bears sometimes practice cannibalism when circumstances demand it. Why would it have been any different 66 million years ago? Another, even more dramatic possibility emerges when I consider the evidence. A fight between two Tyrannosaurus Rex individuals. Perhaps over territory, mating rights, or dominance over a kill. At the end of the confrontation, the victor may have consumed parts of the defeated rival. Wolves, for example, sometimes kill members of rival packs and feed on them. In this scenario, Tyrannosaurus Rex becomes more than just a killing machine. It becomes an animal with complex social behaviors.